Qur'an.
My seemingly shadowy appearance on camera, I can assure you I'm very happy to meet you, some of you again, some of you anew, and I'm happy to learn about your researches, of course. So I'm Javier De Prado, I'm a member of the Nantes team, and my PhD project is to work on a critical edition of the 10th book of the Procuranda Salute Omnium Gentium, which was authored by the Spanish Carmelite Tomás de Jesus and published in Antwerp in 1613. So, as I guess most of you won't be familiar with this work and its author. I'll try to introduce them briefly and then highlight some aspects I wish to focus on during my research. So, as I said, Tomás de Jesus was a Carmelite. He was born in the second half of the 16th century, and is better known and studied nowadays for being a notable mystical writer of the time. However, it was not the only field he explored. According to his biographers, he had a sort of divine revelation while preaching in Spain that led him to leave Spain and travel to Rome to assist another Carmelite, Pedro de la Madre de Dios, in the administration of the Vatican missions. Together, they shaped the missionary project of the Pope, Paul V, and starting in 1607, Thomas prepared two works that were to help somehow setting the ground to the foundation more than a decade later of the Congregatio de Propaganda Fide. So one of these two works is the Procuranda Salute Omnium Gentium. In fact, it is the longest, contains 12 books. It is organized in two main parts. The first one devoted to awaken and establish missionary zeal throughout the Catholic Church. And the second one, the most interesting to me, dealt individually with many of the main confessions of the time. So,
Are you having trouble sharing your screen?
I was well, Zoom told me I had a connection problem, but I don't know if you still hear me well or.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, then fine. So as I said, the second part dealt with many of the main confessions of the time. So we can find, among others, a book on the Orthodox Church, a book on the Eastern churches, and of course, a book about Islam, which is the 10th book. The content of this book, however, it's not entirely original. It is mainly made of extracts from medieval and early modern authors who had written against Islam. And the task Thomas performed was to put together and arrange the extracts, writing brief introductory text when needed, in order to provide the eventual reader with a sort of, let's call it, handbook of anti-Islamic polemics. In fact, every book shares the same feature, since in the prologue, Thomas states his intention of shaping a treatise that could be helpful to any missionary spreading the word of God by gathering many of the most authoritative texts on the difficulties they might encounter. So in establishing the critical text of the 10th book, I hope to identify the exact sources extracted in the text, and thus provide a better base for understanding which materials the missionaries were encouraged to use by some of the Catholic personalities We know, for example, that Francesco Ingoli sent it regularly to missionaries in the East. And another example, Pacifique de Provence carried it in his journey in the East. So although the sources are very diverse, some of them are easily identified, such as Juan de Torquemada, Ricoldo de Montecroce, or Pius II. But others are more obscure. I could cite the case of the Jesuit Benito Pereira or Gabriel Dupreux. So I'll try to work on a deeper analysis that helps to wholly understand how they are blend together and how the extracts relate to each other. The strategies of conversion the authors seek to point out. So, well, there are more aspects on this work, but I want only to well, highlight one more before finishing my speech, because we know of some notes left by Pietro della Valle criticizing the approach of the 10th book a few years after the work was published, but also that thanks in part to this same treatise, Franciscan in China was able to deliver a polemical discourse against Islam more than a century later, that is 18th century, in fact. So well, I would like to work on this span of time between Pietro della Valle and Carlo Rasi di Castorano. And also, besides this in situ reception, it had some impact as well on the writings of Dutch scholars like Gijs Vervoet, Johannes Vorbeek, or Adrian Rayland. So by studying this text and hopefully others I come across in my research, I expect to help to shed some light on the reception also of the 10th book of the De Procuranda Salute Omnium Gentium. And I won't go further on explaining my project. I hope it's clear.